Sociology, we're back. This is Unit 2, Day 2, Part 1. Today, well, in this part, we're going to talk about the bystander effect and types of groups. So, the bystander effect, to start off, is the effect that says, as it's kind of counterintuitive, it says as the size of a group increases, the likelihood of a person helping inside of that group decreases. So it's an inverse relationship. As one goes up, the other goes down. As one goes down, the other goes up. That's inverse. An inverse relationship between the size of a group and the likelihood of each individual person helping. If you've ever taken a CPR class, one of the things, at least every CPR class I've gone to, because of the bystander effect, they tell you, is they say when there's a person in need, one of the first things you do is you say, call 911. But you don't just say, call 911. You point at a specific person and you say, you. Point at a person or call them by name if you know their name. Call 911. And you do this because of the bystander effect and a thing called diffusion of responsibility. Diffusion of responsibility is that if there are 20 people in a room, then the responsibility to call 911 is divided among those 20 people. But if you put all the responsibility on one person, then 100% of that responsibility is on that one person. Diffusion of responsibility is a bad thing, and it causes the bystander effect. Let me tell you about a story that I had. This is the story I tell in class. It's going to be illustrated by Microsoft Paint here. So I'm driving down I-35, right? And my beautiful paint skills. I'm going to do a very boxy car just for the sake of time. So here's a car in front of me, and here is my car. All right, so this is me down at the bottom, and the car in front is, let's make it transparent. The car in the front is in front of me. Going up I-35 in Edmond area, and it's important for this story that we have light poles. So there's a light pole, light pole, light pole, light pole, light pole on the right side of the road. So car in front of me, right? We're driving. It's like the 2nd Street exit or so. Car in front of me starts veering to the right, and then more to the right, and then he goes on the shoulder, and then he goes on the grass, and then he mows over one of these light poles. And it goes boop. Now let me ask you, what do I do after this happens? Well, I suppose if I was a good person, well, the correct thing to do would have been to check if he was okay, or maybe call 911, do something like that. But what did I do? I drove on past. Exited and went home. And why did I do this? Because of the bystander effect. The bystander effect says it wasn't just me and him on the road. There were a bunch of cars. So there were probably like 20 or 30 people that saw this happen. And that's the problem, is that there's a whole bunch of people that saw this happen, not just me. And so they all did the same thing. Once you see people acting in a certain way, you kind of act the same. That's conformity. And so we all had this diffusion of responsibility for this action. And so we all said, I don't want to call 911 because probably a few other people already called 911. I don't want to bother them. I don't want to bother myself. I'm just going to hope someone else deals with this. Bystander effect. This lady was kind of a victim of the bystander effect. In the 1960s, Kitty Genovese, she's in her mid-20s. She's in New York City. There are two apartment complexes in New York City. 1, 2. And an alleyway between them. Let's draw a person here. Kitty it's early in the morning, so like 2 in the morning, or I guess late at night. I'm not sure what you consider that. And she is walking, got a very large stick body. She's walking in the alleyway. Kitty is walking in the alleyway, and all of a sudden, there is a bad person that comes up behind her and stabs her. Stab, 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 stab. So Kitty then lays on the ground, stabbed, and a whole bunch of people saw this. We know a whole bunch of people saw this because their lights started turning on. So these lights all across the apartment complex start turning on, indicating that some people saw it and turned their lights on and saw the stabbing. But because of the bystander effect, nobody called the police. The bad guy walked away, and I think something like 40 minutes later, bad guy comes back and continues stabbing her, kills her, and then runs away. Police are never called. Because of the bystander effect. Because this person here thought that this person was going to call the police, and this person thought that this person was going to call the police. This person thought that this person was going to call the police, and this person thought that this person was going to call the police. And nobody called the police. The bystander effect. After that, and kind of on a different topic, is types of groups. And there are 4 types of crowds, and there are 2 types of acting crowds. So mob and riot are both forms of acting crowds. And then there are 3 theories that explain crowd behavior. So we're going to go over all this. So let's go over the types of crowds. Casual crowd is the quickest crowd. It's a bunch of strangers that come together. They form for a common purpose, like to watch something. For example, if there's a street performer, there's a guy playing the guitar downtown Oklahoma City, and a whole bunch of people that were walking kind of form this 10-person crowd. Nobody knows each other. Nobody's interacting with each other. And then after the performer is done, they disperse. So it's very quick. There's not much interaction within the crowd. That would be a casual crowd. Conventional crowd. They form on purpose. So they all gather together for a reason together, but there's not much interaction. So for this, it'd be like watching a movie. Everybody goes to the movie to watch the movie. They don't actually talk to each other. In fact, you shouldn't talk to each other during a movie. And then they leave. But it lasts a little bit longer. Still no interaction, but they are there on purpose for a reason. Also, if you go take the subway together, you're all there for a purpose, but you're not really interacting with each other. So longer lasting, but still no interaction. Expressive crowd is sort of like a conventional crowd, but just higher emotion and more interaction. So depending on what kind of sport you're talking about, I guess, watching a sport could be a conventional or expressive crowd, I guess. A really exciting football game could be an expressive crowd because you're all there on purpose. The crowd lasts for a while, and there's more crowd interaction and really heightened emotions in that crowd. So you're yelling and screaming. But a little bit of a more tame sport crowd might just be a conventional crowd. But conventional crowd is less interaction, but you're there for a purpose. Expressive crowd is more interaction, that you're there for a purpose. Both of them last a while. And then acting crowd. Acting crowd, you actually accomplish a goal. So it's a group of people that come together to accomplish a goal. And then that further subdivides into mob and riot, which kind of breaks down into mobs are more organized. So if a mob of people, so there's 50 people that form a mob, if they're doing something, they're doing that thing on purpose. So if they are going to break windows or kill somebody or whatever, they're doing that because that was the purpose of the crowd in the first place. And the crowd got together to do that thing. They did the thing. And that was the purpose of the crowd. That's a mob. Riot, on the other hand, is a whole bunch of people get together. It's high emotions, and things happen, but that wasn't necessarily the goal of the riot or the acting crowd. So if there's 50 people that get together in downtown Oklahoma City, and they're in a big group, and they start breaking windows or smashing cars or whatever, or someone gets killed, but that wasn't the purpose of the group, then that would be a riot. So a riot, much less organization, and things happen. The same thing can happen in a mob or a riot. It's kind of the level of organization that determines what it is. All right, so there's 3 theories of crowd behavior, 2 competing theories. Contagion theory and convergence theory are kind of opposites. They explain things in a totally different way. And then emergent norm theory is not trying to compete with those 2. So let's talk about contagion and convergence theory first. Contagion theory. It's about, both of those theories are about why people come together in these acting groups. So riots or mobs pretty much. Or I guess any group. But contagion theory is trying to explain why riots do what they do. Convergence theory is also trying to explain why riots do what they do. Contagion theory says that if there's a group of people and it gets unruly and windows start getting smashed or whatever, or it's after a football game and the goalposts get torn down, it's because these otherwise disconnected people got together and they became kind of one with the crowd. They sort of merged into this collective thinking, and then this new groupness wanted to tear down the goalposts or wanted to smash the windows or whatever the group did. It's a bunch of otherwise regular, ordinary people that got together and became the group. And once the group was there, once the emotions were heightened, then they became this thing that they weren't otherwise. They became this thing that did these things. That's contagion theory. Convergence theory says, and it kind of explains different situations, but convergence theory is, it's not that ordinary people went together and formed this thing that made them do things they wouldn't ordinarily do. It's a bunch of people that think the same way anyway, getting together and forming a group of like-minded people that just do that anyway. So after a football game, you can explain tearing down the goalposts as contagion theory or convergence theory. If they tear down the goalposts according to contagion theory, it would be a bunch of just regular football-watching people that work regular jobs or regular students and don't regularly do things like that. But when they got after the football game, they were really excited. They got together. There were these 20 people on the field, and they were getting just kind of feeding off of each other. And because of all that energy, then those 20 people started going and they tore down the goalpost. They wouldn't ordinarily do that if they weren't in the group, but because they were all in the group together, got caught up in the moment, so to speak, they tore down the goalpost. That would be contagion theory. Convergence theory would be there are 500 people watching a football game, but then the 20 most destructive people, I guess, got together on the football field, and they all kind of wanted to do it anyway, but they all got together, and then they tore down the goalposts. So just a bunch of people that already were kind of that direction of thinking and wanting to do things, just got together and found like-minded people and did the thing. Emergent norm theory says that norms shift in groups, and kind of also explains tearing down goalposts, I guess. But emergent norm theory says there are different norms for different situations. Like, if you're in class and it's 9 o'clock in the morning at school and you just start yelling, that's weird. Don't do that. But if you're at a football game, that's totally normal. In fact, if you're not yelling, that could be weird. Norms shift in crowds. Also, in a mob or riot, it's, in addition to it being arguably wrong to break windows and things like that, it also is just odd. If you were just kind of walking in the middle of the day, just walking by yourself, and you just smashed a store window, it's just weird. I mean, there's no reason for that. But if you're in a riot and everyone's doing that, then all of a sudden, right or wrong, the norm is it's okay to be destructive. So then it makes it much more normalized. It makes it much more acceptable to do those things. Once the norm has shifted away from the regular into this new norm of it's more acceptable to do whatever it is the group is doing. And that's it for this part. The next part will be talking about norms, which we just referenced here, and starting a project. But go ahead and fill out the Google form for this part, and that's it for the part.